fuck was that? What the fuck was that?
There's a town in America stuck in the 1950s.
Listen, they call these places controlled alternative living environments, okay? Project started back in the 50s. Said they wanted cultural preservation, but, I mean, there's no excuse to convince a town full of people that the rest of the world is in shambles, right? And so, look, they went into these towns, manipulated their local media, right? Came in with rehearsed news bits about apocalyptic phenomena taking place out in the world, set a perimeter around the borders so nobody could leave, right? I mean, the people were so afraid. I mean, picture literal forced containment, okay? Fast forward through the 60s, 70s, 80s, up until present day, nothing in these places has changed, right? These people are still living in the same sort of snapshot image of this town from 1956, literally at this moment, completely unaware of the rest of the outside world's advancement. Literally just unknowingly controlled by a group of overseeing intelligence agents.
Nation is simulating. Y'all better pay attention. Something is happening again. New York just got a new man. I don't think people understand what just got activated. In the last 3 days, 3 major things happened. The former vice president during 9/11, Dick Cheney, just passed away November 3rd. The same week, New York elects its first Muslim mayor, Mandani. And right in the middle of that, a UPS cargo plane goes down in Kentucky. Flight number 2976. The number of people who died in the 9/11 attack, 2976. The same exact number. That UPS cargo plane that crashed at Muhammad Ali International Airport, one of the hijackers from 9/11, Khalid Muhammad. This ain't coincidence. This is choreography. The mayor of Louisville said 9 people died and 11 injured. 9/11. That plane that crashed, it used to be a passenger jet that retired 9 years and 11 days before that accident. Every number, every headline, looping like a ritual on replay. You really think that's random? Mandani, born October 18th, 1991. From his birth to Trump's inauguration this year, 33 years. You know how long the towers stood before they fell? 33 years. And that UPS jet, it reached only 175 feet before it went down. Same as Flight 175, the second plane on 9/11. They said that same plane had a 33% load factor. Every single number matching. It's not a pattern. That's a program. The simulation can't hide itself. It repeats itself until you wake up. You could call that math, or you could call that fate, or the Matrix. But when the same codes show up at the same time, after the same people, in the same cities, that's not news. That's a reset. Look at the sky calendar. We just passed an eclipse that crossed every state tied to 9/11 responders. Now I want you to go down the rabbit holes and tell me what you think.
A new area that the simulation loads more people in. You look out your window and your street is quiet and calm, but once you go outside, then everyone starts loading in and you have a few cars going by, maybe someone's walking a dog, maybe there's some kids on bikes. Or when you go to a restaurant and it's empty, but then after a few minutes, a bunch of people start showing up. Is that just the simulation loading in NPCs for you so it doesn't feel empty? Is there a delay in them all showing up because they had to load in from far enough away that you couldn't see them spawn in?
So what is it about images like this and African style or Egyptian style artifacts that were found in the Grand Canyon that have to be covered up? What is it about these kind of images that they can't accept? What does it tell us about true human history? And listen, stick around, because I've got a drone video of this site. When I shared this picture, many people commented. Many people said that this can't be real, that this has to be photoshopped, that he had to use artificial intelligence. People suggested, I see right over here where they blended it. But this image is of a real site on the East Coast of the United States of America. Please stick around, because for those people who said it wasn't real, you remember that we are the receipts. That we taught you the giants are real. We're teaching you about the Smithsonian. And stick around for this video, because we're going to fly over with a drone this area right here. We want you to see that it's real. We want you to see how important it is. So here we go. Let's switch. And now you are flying over the area that you just saw in that picture. What is it about images like this? What do they point to in history that they cannot let you into the Grand Canyon? They will not accept that images like this exist. It was obviously outside of their imagination, because they did everything to say that that could not be a real picture. Well, now guess what? Please like this video right now. Please share this video, because now you are sharing the evidence of this picture that's been around for over 5 years. That you are now debunking anything they had to say, because you are flying over it in a drone video that demonstrates it to you that it's real. And listen, what's important about this is that these images, it's just not about being Egyptian, because Sumeria predates Egypt. Here, these images are Sumerian, and we're going to demonstrate to you how the site that you're flying over right now, that they were worshiping Enki. Yes, they were worshiping the serpent god from Sumeria. You wanted to know why they would cover it up? Well, let's dig deeper and deeper into why. Enki was the Lord of Eden. Enki was the god of fresh water. And here we find him right at the bottom of the oldest freshwater system on earth, the Susquehanna River. Here is a site that they worship the serpent. We have thousands of ceremonial fetishes that represent serpents of different types from this site. This is a site where they're worshiping Sumerian gods. In other words, this predates Egypt. This predates Mesopotamia. And that's why they have to cover it up, because another civilization that lived right here, and we're going to show you how this continues into the water. That yes, the civilizations that you're looking for, like Atlantia or Atlantis, depending on the belief system that you follow, well, we're going to teach you how these people are relative to that, because as we're teaching you in this video and in these pictures, we want you to see, we're going to show you some pictures of mounds here. We want you to see that these are irrigation lines, just like in Mesopotamia, like you see here. This picture is from archaeologists from Mesopotamia that demonstrate, based on archaeological record, what life looked like in Mesopotamia. And here you see it right here in America. People, this predates. We have soil data here. We have soil samples that are from 20,000 BCE to 8,000 BCE that prove that that's why they don't want you to know. And that's why they're afraid of these images. That's why they will not let you in the Grand Canyon. So listen, please like this video right now. I need your help. You're not making me famous. What you're doing is speaking for the voice of this ancient civilization site that you flew over. Now, you say you want to visit ancient civilization sites. You say you want to fly over these places. You want to visit these places. Well, in this video, it's demonstrated to you that they're real. We're heading up to Delaware in October. You're welcome to come visit this site with us. Please share. This is Human Origins Revealed. Remember who shared it to you first. We're going to come out with another video that demonstrates that this site has a large, expansive, that you saw in this video, this entire site was fed by a freshwater irrigation system that proves that civilization lived here in North America long before it lived in Mesopotamia. The root of the Great Reset and the big cover-up starts here, and we're going to connect that to the Grand Canyon and all these other things that we're teaching you about. Please come in. Don't just look at my videos. Please remember to like them. Please share them and help enhance and grow the voice of this ancient civilization. Their voice has not been lost. It was just forgotten and covered up.
The legend of Charlie No-Face, located in various parts of Pennsylvania. Here's the story. Also known as the Green Man, Charlie No-Face was a real person. His name is Raymond Robinson, and he has quite a tragic tale. The legend was told as a man with no face would stalk people at night. The real story is when he was 8 years old, he was climbing up an electrical pole and got shot, surviving but terribly burning his face and arms. He actually walked at night to avoid being ridiculed or scaring people. People were assholes. And as far as people calling him the Green Man, some say that it was just his clothes reflecting the lights off the cars. People who knew him said he was a hell of a nice guy, just a man forced into isolation by society.
There is something else going on here, and now we have the proof. Vance Belcher, the alleged lone wolf, who just went crazy and started politicians out of nowhere. Don't worry, he's totally MAGA, just listen to the media. No, he's definitely not. And when we watched him get apprehended by special forces with that creepy MK Ultra look in his eye, something didn't square. Something seems very off. Now here's what we know. We know that his wife worked for Tim Walz. Here's the proof. She worked for Tim Walz in 2011 when he was a congressman. We know that he had an anti-Trump No Kings posters in the back of his vehicle, not exactly MAGA activities. We know that he was a murderous monster. At least that's what the authorities say. This is him in this strange footage of a latex mask on, dressed like a police officer. This is before he committed his murders. We know that the police officers engaged him outside of the house of the Speaker of the House, a Democrat named Melissa Hortman in Minneapolis, dressed like this. They got into a firefight, and then they let him enter the home and commit the murders, and then escape, which makes no sense to me. No one's yet been able to explain that to me. You know, the police fired a hail of bullets. Somehow the out-of-shape, limping, overweight Vance Belcher was able to get away and escape, even though they had the house surrounded. And then this master criminal just kept leaving clues like this, straight out of a Scooby-Doo novel. Here's his hat. Vance Belcher himself was appointed by Governor Walz. Yep. Here's the letter of appointment. business member for the governor's Workforce Development Board. It was a prestigious workforce, and here's Tim Walz' signature. So the two definitely knew of each other. I mean, that Tim Walz is signing the paperwork with his name. Why the hell would this guy do this? He has a very strange background. He worked for an NGO that was relocating Africans to Minnesota. He left his family of 5. He commits these murders. He's found in a field. There's something missing here. Well, we found out yesterday that Vance Belcher blamed Governor Walz in a confession letter. Now, this is after authorities told us, no, there's no confession letter. Because here are credible, very respected Minnesota news outlets writing exclusive. Vance Belcher blames Tim Walz for rampaging confession letter. Okay, what does the letter say? Multiple sources with direct knowledge of the investigation claim that to Alpha News that Belcher's so-called confession letter was intended to go to Kash Patel, director of the FBI. Well, now we've learned something even more horrifying. Minnesota assassin Tim Walz appointee Vance Belcher wrote a letter to the FBI claiming the military trained him in secret. And that Tim Walz personally instructed him to take out these politicians and target other Democrat politicians. Wow. Representative Amy Klobuchar was one that was listed. This is a senator from Minnesota, and some have speculated that Tim Walz wanted to run for the Senate seat. The military trained him? That's what he says? He said he was secretly trained, covertly trained by the military? Let's watch.
Who disguised himself as a cop on Democrat politicians and their spouses. He too, and seriously injured 2 others. He wrote a letter to the FBI claiming he was trained by the U.S. military, quote, off the books, and that Tim Walz asked him to kill Amy Klobuchar so he could take her Senate seat. Wow. Belcher's facing state and federal murder charges.
People with direct knowledge say Vance Belcher addressed the FBI in this letter. They framed the letter as rambling and conspiratorial, but can you please produce the contents of the letter? Accused Minnesota assassin wildly claimed that Tim Walz instructed him to Amy Klobuchar. Belcher alleged in the letter that Democrat vice presidential candidate directed him to murder Amy Klobuchar as part of a supposed plot to take her Senate seat. Minnesota Star Tribune. This is why they keep lying. They have had multiple different stories on this. There was a manifesto, then we heard the authorities were going through the manifesto, and then the authorities told us there was no manifesto. Was this why? In a rambling conspiratorial letter addressed to the FBI, Governor Tim Walz instructed him, Senator Amy Klobuchar, and presumably other Democrats, so that Walz could run for U.S. Senate. According to 2 people familiar with the contents of the letter is the clearest evidence yet of Belcher's mindset after the targeted violence against Minnesota politicians last week. It's 1.5 pages long, confusing and hard to read, according to 2 people familiar with the letter's content. It includes Belcher's alleging that he had been trained by the U.S. military off the books, and that Walz, who is not running for Senate, had asked him to Amy Klobuchar and others. Well, release the letter, I guess? I mean, are there any word from the U.S. military on this? Has there been any type of report other than to just call him a conspiracy theorist? Can we just get some verifiable evidence that there's no connection here? Because everything that we see, that there is a connection here. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it. But nothing in the guy's story makes any sense. He does have connections to Tim Walz. He does have a life that can't be explained. He was working at a 7-Eleven, then he's working as a security guard, then he's working as a mortician, pulling eyeballs out of corpses, that's a matter of fact. And then he was running a nonprofit to resettle Africans into Minnesota. And then, more importantly, is this why the house was burgled? Somebody broke into the murder scene and cased the place. They didn't take anything. They didn't rip any TVs out of the wall. They didn't take any of the jewelry. They just went in, nothing was missing, and cops said, don't worry about it, forget about it. But the house was, the murder scene was burglarized. What is it? What the hell is that about? But it seems like a cleanup operation to me. It just seems like that would be the only reason to go burglarize a murder scene days after a double murder. Why would anybody need to break in here? Is there something more that they're trying to cover up? Are they trying to clean up their tracks? See if this makes any sense to you. Here's the authorities, here's the police officers explaining how they engaged Vance Belcher outside of this residence. The authorities let him into the house, allowed him to go in, commit the murders, and then escape by their own admission. I mean, I hope we get a proper investigation here. Somebody needs to call Tim Walz for questioning. I think that is probably a good place to start.
Belcher then traveled to Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, and the home of Minnesota State Representative Melissa Hortman. At approximately 3:30 a.m., Belter arrived at Representative Portman's house in his black SUV with the police license plates. He parked in the driveway and left the emergency lights on his SUV flashing, as if he was a police officer. Belter approached Representative Portman's home, again dressed as a police officer, wearing the tactical vest and body armor, and wearing that hyper-realistic mask. He was armed and carrying a flashlight. Before he entered the home, 2 Brooklyn Park police officers arrived at the scene. They too had been dispatched to check on Representative Portman after learning of the shooting of Senator Hoffman. When they arrived at the scene, they saw Belter's black SUV parked in the driveway with the emergency lights flashing, and they saw Belter standing in front of the house several feet from the door. When Belter saw the officers get out of the car, he drew his weapon and began firing. He rushed into the house through the front door, firing into it. He repeatedly fired into the house, and when he entered, he murdered Representative Portman and her husband, Mark. The Brooklyn Park police officers fired at Belter as he rushed into the home, but he escaped into the home.
This video was recently posted to TikTok with no context. It shows this guy walking down a narrow walkway, and he's about to enter this store. He then turns around. You can see him visibly start to panic as 2 individuals approach him, and this is where the video cuts off.
Prominence. And in Julia, seemingly ordinary women starred in a viral video in which they lift and throw an entire car with impressive ease. Shortly after, they repeated the feat with a real vehicle, as if it weighed almost nothing. Watching the 2 in action raised the suspicion that perhaps there is a hidden potential that we never imagined.
This incident took place on April 1st of 2023 in Jequié, Brazil. Specifically, this appears to have happened in a strip mall / shopping area. This is where this man was ambushed out of nowhere by 2 men wearing helmets who chased him into the store. This guy did attempt to hide. There was nowhere to run though. So him, as well as another individual, were dispatched of right then and there. And as many of you guys are probably aware, this is not all that unsurprising to see a video like this coming out of Brazil. This has been a big problem for quite some time now.
Mexico have had enough. Massive protests erupted yesterday in several cities, including outside the presidential palace, where Claudia Sheinbaum works and lives. Protesters say that they are angry at the government's failure to clamp down on violent crime in the country. And while it started out peaceful, a small group of protesters started tearing down fences and throwing objects at riot police, leading to clashes and a response of tear gas and fire extinguishers. Around 120 people were injured, with 100 of them being police officers. Now, these protests were triggered by the recent public assassination of Mayor Carlos Manzo, who was very outspoken about organized crime in the country. Demonstrators at this protest chanted, "Carlos did not die, the government killed him." And also, similar to other Gen Z organized rallies around the world, the one-piece flag was seen there too. But to give you an idea of what they are protesting, since the year 2008, American politicians have been murdered. In that same time frame for politicians in Mexico, that number stands at a staggering 1,271. Mexico's 2024 general election was one of the most violent in the country's history, and the CPJ committee recently found that Mexico has the highest number of disappeared journalists in the world. Yet, to date, not one case of a disappeared journalist in Mexico has ever led to a conviction. And also, out of Mexico's 130,000 people registered as disappeared, only 35 have led to a conviction. Now, Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, responded to these Gen Z-led protests by questioning their motivations. She said that they were inorganic, paid for, promoted from abroad, and amplified by bots on social media.